In the previous lecture, we discussed that the Depression, it seemed that policy was tightened too early, and that led to a double dip. And then today we were discussing that policy in the 70s was too slow to tighten. How do we know when the right time is, and is there a right time, or does it vary all the time?
Well, it's challenging, and that's certainly one of the reasons that we have so many economists and models and everything we can use to try to figure out what the appropriate moment is to tighten or to ease policy. And it's not an easy thing. Forecasting is not very accurate, and so we have to provisionally keep looking at what's happening and making our adjustments as we go along. The 70s was particularly difficult because at that time inflation expectations were not at all tied down. One thing that happened then was that if gas prices went up, then people began to expect higher inflation, and then they began to go and demand higher wages to compensate for the higher prices. But then, of course, higher wages would feed through to higher prices, and so on and so on. And that, in turn, was a result of the fact that everybody expected inflation to go up. Nobody had any confidence that the Fed or the government in general would keep inflation low and stable. Now, a very different situation now, fortunately, and this owes a lot to Paul Volcker and to Chairman Greenspan as well, is that after a long period of low inflation, most people are pretty comfortable that inflation will stay reasonably low, despite the fact that there are ups and downs, with gas prices and so on. And that helps a lot because with inflation staying low, the Fed has more leeway. If policy is easy for a period, that's not necessarily going to feed into a wage price spiral that will create a much bigger inflation problem down the road. So keeping inflation expectations low and stable is in fact one of the great accomplishments of Chairman Volcker and Chairman Greenspan, and an important objective of central banks around the world. So the environment changes over time. It's a difficult task, but the 70s was particularly difficult because at that time, with expectations so volatile, any kind of inflation pressure from gas prices, wherever, quickly fed into wage demands and into other prices. So it was a much more difficult situation.